Welcome back to the second part of Luke. All right, so last week we looked at the first part of the second part of Luke, and now we're looking at the second part of Luke. Now, the second part of Luke is the story basically of Jesus going to Jerusalem, and in amongst that is obviously stopping at places and teaching and whatever, but it's very much his journey to Jerusalem, which then the third part is when he gets to Jerusalem, we have his death and resurrection. So let's get into that. I'm going to jump straight to chapter 15. I want to talk a little bit about the three lost parables, all right? So you got the lost, what do we got? We got the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. So lost sheep. Actually, you know what? Let's make this really interesting. Let's read just the first verse from chapter 15. Well, it's actually verse 4, but the start of the story, it says, "What man among you, if he has 100 sheep?" So we like to think of this story that God is the shepherd, but Jesus is not saying that. He's saying, what if you were the shepherd? What would you do if you were the shepherd? You know, if you're the shepherd, God's not the shepherd, you are, and you've got 100 sheep and you lost one, what would you do? Would you not leave the 99 and go chase the one? And when you find that one, you are gonna party, you are gonna celebrate. Well, how much more is God going to celebrate? I really like that framing because it kind of puts us in the picture. You've got 100 sheep. I think it's fascinating. I like the idea that it's 100 sheep because what does that mean? It means that they've counted them and that they've counted that one has gone missing. You know, I think that's a fascinating story. You got to also understand that in Jewish culture, 100 sheep is a massive farm. I mean, they don't got kelpies, they don't got motorbikes or horses. They're just walking along and the sheep follow them. So 100 sheep is a lot of sheep. And hence, I guess it's much easier to count 5 sheep than it is 100, but every sheep counts and they know that they have missed one sheep. And so they leave the 99 to chase the one, and God goes, how much more is God going to sell? It's not that God lost a sheep. You know, I think this is a really interesting thing. It talks about God chases the one, and I actually really like that song. There's that song about, is it Reckless Love or whatever, where it talks about that God chases the one, but God never lost one. God never lost any of the 100. It's if you were a shepherd and you lost a sheep, how much are you going to celebrate finding that sheep? Well, God celebrates even more when somebody who is lost. So God didn't lose them. He's just, that's a whole nother thought. But you know, we are all made in his image. We are all children of God. And when one of us come home, he loves it. Hence the last parable, which we'll get to. So the second parable is the lost coin. So there's a lady. So if God is not the shepherd we are, imagine if you were a shepherd. Well, God is not the woman who has lost a coin. Maybe we could say it this way. Imagine you were a lady who had these 10 wedding coins and you lost one. And you're turning up everything and you're turning the house upside down looking for this lost coin. And then you find it. How much are you gonna celebrate? And he goes, just like that lady, just like you would celebrate if you lost a coin, in the same way, that's how God celebrates when a child comes home. And that's very, very cool, because again, you got those same things. It means that these are not just 10 coins in a cupboard somewhere. They've been counted. They know that one has gone missing. And so whatever, because again, God doesn't lose his coins. That's not what this is saying. He's saying just like you would respond if you lost a coin, when somebody comes home, that's how he celebrates. And then the third story is the parable of the lost son. So what's the parable of the lost son? Again, fascinating, scandalous even story of a dad. So again, we would say that God is the dad, but if we follow that pattern, it would be, imagine if you were a father and you had 2 sons. But anyway, one of them goes, Dad, I wish you were dead. And he takes his stuff and goes. And it's interesting because at that point, the older brother's job was to sort of pull him aside and say, dude, pull your head in, you know, but he doesn't, probably because, you know, maybe he would like to do the same thing, but he doesn't have the guts, you know, but he just leaves. And this guy, prodigal just means wasteful, the wasteful son. And so he just wastes his money on crazy living and loses all his money and then loses all his friends and ends up homeless in a gutter. One day he wakes up and realizes even the servants in the house are more blessed than I am. If I could just go home and be a servant in the Father's house, I'm going to be blessed. So he works up his courage and he works up this speech and he starts coming home. And the father is looking out, they were doing the dishes, looking out the window and sees the son come home, and he runs and to the son, to his lost son. And that's important for a bunch of reasons. Number one, fathers don't run in that culture. Number two, I think part of what does happen in that culture is that if the community had have known that he was coming back, they would have killed him because he was a disgrace and he was shamed. And so maybe that's why the father ran, was to protect his son. And he came, brings him back in, and the son goes, about to do his spiel, Father, I've shamed you and whatever, but if I could be a servant. And the father's not even listening. The father just reinstates him back straight away. And he's like, let's have a party. So they're having a party, they're doing their thing, and then I don't know, the older brother hears Maroon 5 playing in the house, wondering what's going on. He asks the servant, what's going on? And he goes, didn't you hear? Your brother who was lost has been found. He's back. They're having a party. And he goes, and he sort of just cracks it and goes out in the farm, and the dad comes out and says, hey, dude, why don't you come back in and party with us? And he's going, but you never gave me a party. And he's going, what are you talking about? You've always been a part of this family. Everything I have is yours, but this son that was lost has been found. Come back and join us and celebrate with us. And the son says, no. So that's the story of the lost son. So there's a lot in this story, right? But, and I don't even know, we don't probably have time to get into all of it, but there's so much there. So again, I think there's an element of, just as you would if you were a father and you had a lost child, a child who rebelled and left the house and went away from you, how much would you protect them, celebrate for them, and whatever if they were to return? But then there was another, a son who felt unappreciated and felt, that he didn't leave, and where's his party, this kind of idea. But I want to just take it from a slightly different perspective and just see where it takes us. Because I think a lot of what this has, and I've heard this mainly from Amy Jill Levine and her talking about this story, but is you've got 100 sheep that were all counted. You've got 10 coins that were all counted, and you've got 2 sons both wondering if they count. And I think that is maybe what the core of these stories are about. Do I count? Because if you look at, we're very quick to judge and jump down the throat of the older brother in that story. But here's the thing, the father had time to kill a fatted calf. That doesn't just take 5 minutes. I won't go into the gory details, but that takes a bit of time. It takes time to organise the catering. It takes time to organise the band. It takes time to invite all the guests. And despite all of that, nobody thought to invite the older brother. And so I think just as the younger brother has this story of do I count, I think the older brother also has the story of do I count? I think sometimes as a church, maybe a way that might explain this a bit better is I grew up in a church movement and look, I'm not judging anybody. I preach this. I'd preach messages. The church is the only organisation that exists for those who aren't in it yet. But what about the people who are in it? Don't they count? What about them? What about, yes, we want to see everybody outside the kingdom come into the kingdom, but the ones who are already in, they count too. It's very easy to overlook those that are close to us, those that are loyal to us. I think these whole lost parables are to God everybody counts. The one sheep that was lost counts. The one coin that was lost counts. Yes, the one son that was lost counts. But you know what? The 99 sheep also count. The 9 coins also count. And the brother who stayed home was loyal and faithful. They count as well. And so maybe some questions that we could ask around this might be something like, are there people in our world that we have discounted? Maybe another question we could ask is, do we take people around us for granted? Or do they count? Do they know? How well have we communicated to people that are around us that they count? Maybe another question could be, do I know, do I feel like I count? Because maybe in our world and in our life, the people around us have discounted us, but God never does, and God never will. And so I just think this is a fascinating way to look at this story. And so we might end it there, but I just want to go, God celebrates every child who comes home, there is no doubt, but God also celebrates every child who is already home. And I think that is something to keep in mind. I think we should be the same. I think we should not be ostracizing anybody, and we should not be ignoring and be apathetic to anybody. Everybody counts. You count, I count. And if anything shows us that, the cross of Jesus shows that this to be true. So with that being said, again, comments where you're up to. If you're getting something out of it, maybe you see something in there that I didn't bring up, why don't you put that in the comments below? And I look forward to finishing off part 2 of the book of Luke next week. Love you. Bye-bye.